welcome to Sleeping Cerberus ASMR. And today, I thought it would be fun to take a look at my Nintendo 64 collection. Talk about some of the games and other interesting items that I have, and we'll see if there's anything rare in my little collection. So let's get right into this. So first off, in this crinkly plastic, for whatever reason, is Super Smash Bros. I love playing this game, and I think it's still super fun to this day. It moves a little bit more slowly than the newer ones, but at the time, of course, you couldn't tell the difference because that's all you had. I always played as Kirby, which in hindsight I know was one of the best characters according to the tier lists that are online. And my best friend at the time would always play as Fox, which is one of the other best characters. So we somehow stumbled into some of the better characters, but they were all super fun to play as. Did you guys have a favorite character to play as in the original Smash Bros. Game? Okay, next off we have Pokemon Stadium. This game was kind of mind-blowing to me because the interesting thing about Pokemon Stadium, if you're unfamiliar, is you would be able to take your Game Boy game and put it into this device that would slot into the bottom of the N64 controller, like that. And it allowed you to bring all of your favorite and strongest Pokemon into Pokemon Stadium and see them battle in glorious 3D. And all of the animations that were in this game were just absolutely incredible. it's a game that's much harder to play if you don't put in your Pokemon that you trained. So how it would work is you would get rental Pokemon in Pokemon Stadium that you would have to use, and they may not have been as strong or as well balanced as something that you could create on your own. So definitely an added challenge if you didn't have your own Pokemon. And next up, of course, has to be Pokemon Stadium 2 in this glorious half gold and half silver cartridge. It really met the challenge of getting the theming perfectly right. I mean, what a gorgeous cartridge this is. With that shiny front, so similar to the first Pokemon Stadium, you could pull over your Pokemon from gold and silver and see them in the game. It was a really, really fun way to kind of expand that universe and see those Pokemon how they were, originally thought of in full 3D. Love Pokemon Stadium 2. And another thing I forgot to mention in the Pokemon Stadium games were the mini games. There was just some absolute amazing mini games that you could play in Pokemon Stadium. Next up is Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards. This is another of my most beloved games. It is a 2.5D side-scrolling game, and in it you can, obviously you play as Kirby, and you can absorb the powers of the enemies, which is fairly standard, but you could take that power and combine it with a second enemy, and it could be any combination of two elemental abilities, and they would combine in just unique and super fun ways. Some of the abilities weren't super practical, but that was one of the reasons that made it so fun to experiment with all of the different combinations. And the music in this game is also just awesome, just such a fun game. This one also had some pretty good mini games if I remember correctly. Okay, you guys, this is one of my absolute favorite and underappreciated games of the N64. This is Space Station Silicon Valley, and in this very unique platformer game, you essentially take control of this little computer chip, and on this space station there are different zones with different robotic animals, and you can take your little chip and go into all of the different animals that all have different abilities. Like there are these ski huskies husky on skis that has a rocket launcher on its back, if I remember correctly. And if it wasn't the huskies, there was also these walruses. I think they also shot rockets. So just a bunch of super fun things to experiment with. And it's kind of like if you've played Mario Odyssey, where you can take control over other enemies and creatures in unique ways. I would absolutely love a remake of this game. I would even take a, remastered port at this point. And once or twice a year, I do a Google search to see if anybody's talking about it. And it's unfortunately one that I think is just kind of forgotten. But an absolute fantastic game that, if it was modernized just a little bit to add some quality of life improvements and a fresh coat of paint, it would really be special to a new audience. Next up is Yoshi's Story, which is another 2.5D side-scrolling game. And I remember wanting this game just because the art style looked so interesting to me, and it kind of stood out from the other games on the platform. I think at this point the Yoshi games are kind of have a reputation for trying really unique art styles. Like we had Woolly World, which everything was basically made out of yarn, and Crafted World, which is basically everything was made out of arts and crafts and looked like dioramas. So kind of had the theming from the beginning with Yoshi's Story. This is a Clay Fighter 63 1/3, which was a fighting game that used these very unique, kind of like stop motion clay puppets as the characters. I was never really super into fighting games, but this one stood out to me as being very interesting and just different. At least when it came to how goofy it was and how the game looked. So, if you know about some of the N64 catalog and some of the rarer games, you may know what's coming up next. But for everyone else, I will put this in and get the next game out. Okay, so this game that clearly is in pristine, mint collectible condition. I mean, you can tell it's just, it's like been kept in a perfect, untouched condition for years. It hasn't been messed up at all. This is Clay Fighter Sculptors this is by far the rarest game in my little collection. This was basically a sequel to the Clay Fighter game we just looked at, but this was a Blockbuster exclusive game for rentals. And so on this cartridge you can see it still has these which would be just used to store them at Blockbuster. So I think I got this when Blockbuster was kind of getting rid of some of their inventory at the store that was close to me at the time. And I don't think I realized that this game was as hard to find as it is now, at least. But yeah, if this game was actually in good condition, it would be kind of valuable. I know there's some professional restores out there that could probably fix this up a little bit, but I'm just going to leave it like this. So yeah, let me know if you've ever heard of this game before, and if you have a copy of this that is in better condition than mine. You definitely have a little gem on your hands. So next up we have World Driver Championship. This is the first in a series of games that I got while I was trying to get my dad into playing games with me. I wasn't really into these type of racing games, but it was something that was straightforward for someone to just pick up and understand that they're just driving a car. So I didn't play this too much by myself, but it's definitely a game that I was trying to get my dad into playing games. Next up is South Park. I think I primarily got this just for the unique nature of having, mature game on the N64. There's a few more that I have that are in this rating, but this was such a, like having South Park on your N64 was such a weird thing, so I had to get it. I don't remember playing very far in this one. I think you run around and throw snowballs at turkeys or something. But yeah, definitely a kind of an oddball game in the N64 catalog. Okay, so this next one was spoiled if you saw what the previous owner must have done. I got this used, and they must have cut out a piece of the box and just taped it on top, which I guess if you're gonna throw away the boxes, this is a way to see them from the top easily, but yeah, Body Harvest. This is another kind of unique game for the N64. I don't think I ever made it too far into this one, but it's kind of an expansive world where you're running around and, like shooting bugs or whatever. I think some of the games, the way I had this organized, near the end were maybe a little bit less played than the ones in the front of the case. But who knows, I'm sure this is somebody's favorite game too, so I definitely don't mind having Body Harvest in my collection. Alright, we are going to go to the second row of games now. So, if my hypothesis is correct, some of the front games here will be some of the ones I played a little bit more often, so let's take a look. And the first game is Super Mario 64. I absolutely adore this game, as I think if you're watching this, you probably do as well. It was the first 3D Mario platformer, and it's aged super well. And I played through this all the way, getting all the stars, and I also played through the DS version of this game as well, that added a couple unique levels to the DS. And I think it would be really cool if they ported the DS version to modern platforms, maybe the next home console in a full 3D remake, so you could have all the greatness of Super Mario 64 combined with those extra levels would be awesome. Okay. Keeping with the theme of games that have aged really well, this is Paper Mario. It still has the used price sticker on it of $24.99. And at the time when I got this, that seemed like an outrageously high price for a used N64 game. But there's a ton of N64 games that I don't have in my little collection that I would love for $25. Paper Mario is definitely worth every penny that I paid. I really appreciate that Nintendo remade Thousand Year Door, and I'm hopeful that them remaking that one doesn't mean that they have permanently skipped remaking this one, because obviously this is a little bit older and would shine up even more than the GameCube Thousand Year Door. But I love Paper Mario. It's one of my favorite games on the system. And I remember seeing this in screenshots in magazines and just I was amazed by how it looked, and I just wanted to be in that world. So if you haven't checked out this Paper Mario, I definitely recommend you playing it. Definitely worth your time if you're into RPG Mario games. Okay, Diddy Kong Racing. This is one of my favorite racing games for the N64, and it was unique because you could not only be in karts, but other vehicles like the plane. I think the world deserves a remake or another one of these games. A super fun racing game on the platform with, great levels and great music. Yeah, this is a great racing game. This is Star Fox 64, which I know a lot of people have some really fond memories of. And people are kind of still waiting for a proper follow-on. I know a lot of people were pretty disappointed by the Wii U Star Fox Zero game. So there's a lot of folks just hoping for a return to form for Star Fox. I probably still played more on the Star Fox level of Smash Brothers, because I just played so much Smash Brothers, but still a really fun game. Alright, going to this wonderful green cartridge, we have Rayman 2, The Great Escape, and I love 3D Rayman games, and I really wish they would come back. I love Rayman 2, and I loved Rayman 3 on the GameCube. Just a really fun platformer. I think for a little while they were, if I remember correctly, they were trying to port this, or they did port it rather, to some of the handheld Nintendo consoles, but I think the N64 is probably still a better way to play it than on the DS. Yeah, well, Rayman 2. Okay, next up we have a Turok, Dinosaur Hunter. This is the first Turok game on the N64 by Acclaim. And I definitely remember running around a little bit in the first Turok, but the next game I definitely remember playing a lot more than the first Turok is. Turok 2, Seeds of Evil. So, this game, pretty much the only thing I ever did was put in the cheat codes, which I still remember. I think it's Beware Oblivion is at hand. I'm fairly certain that is the cheat code to basically unlock everything. And I would just warp to different levels and mess around with all the different weapons that you could get. But I don't think I actually made it very far other than just skipping to different levels, because Turok 2 is kind of just a labyrinth of confusing level design where I never really knew what to do. I never had a proper guide to figure out where to go. So I would just kind of mess around and then turn it off and then play again later. But I think when you're a kid, that's good enough. And let's see, is there a price on this? No. But I think the other used games that I got from different used game stores were a lot less than Paper Mario. And next up we have Turok 3, Shadow of Oblivion. I feel like I remember this one the worst out of the first two. I don't really remember too much about this one, but I knew I liked the first two, so why not pick up the next one? And the game after this is where things get a little interesting, or almost interesting. So let me explain. So this is Turok Rage Wars, and this is basically a version of Turok 3, I think, where they basically stripped out the single player and made it more of a multiplayer game. And there was a bug in Turok Rage Wars that if you wanted it fixed, you would have to mail it in to Acclaim, and they would fix it and send it back to you. And if it was fixed, this would be a gray cartridge. So if this had been mailed in and fixed, this would be definitely one of the rarest N64 games. So it would be worthwhile if you have your N64 collection nearby to see if you ever had Turok Rage Wars, to see if you have this game in a standard gray cartridge, because that is a really special collectible. Even if I had it, I would hold on to it, but it would be a pretty cool thing to have. So this is a game that I would consider almost rare, but because it's not the gray cartridge, it's super common. So, definitely an interesting piece of history where in the good old days, if you had a game that had a glitch in it, there was no way to just download a patch or get it fixed digitally. You had to actually physically send in the cartridge and have the company fix it. So I don't know how many of those are floating around, but it probably is not that many. Okay, next up is another racing game. And this one I actually do remember playing quite a bit. This is Hot Wheels Turbo Racing. And this game, if I remember correctly, just had so many fun, like, shortcuts and hidden paths all over the place. And of course you played as really interesting Hot Wheels cars. So as far as like non Mario Kart, non Diddy Kong racing games, this was my next favorite racing game. I think there is some spiritual successor kind of games in some of the newer racing games where you can play on like Hot Wheels tracks and stuff, but this one was pretty cool and would love to see this come back somehow. Okay, next up is Jet Force Gemini, which was I think this was a super long 3D action game. For whatever reason, I don't think I ever made it super far into this one, but if I remember, this is a pretty long game. Back when, this is like the good old Rare and all the great games that they made. And the last one in this case, I do have one more game after this to show, but last in this case is Bassmaster 2000, and this will go into the category of games where I was getting my dad to play games with me on the N64. So obviously this was a fishing game in a pretty awesome blue cartridge. And one of the interesting things about this game is we also got a fishing rod controller to kind of build the immersion aspect of this. So you had your reel right here, and there weren't any like motion controls or anything. This is just, we always pretended we were casting the line, but it was kind of just to help build your immersion and reeling in fish. So kind of a cool N64 controller. this collection. So we will look at that in just a second. So last and maybe least depending on your opinion of the game is this is Hey You, Pikachu. So this game had a feature where there was a microphone, and the idea is that you would talk into the microphone and Pikachu would listen to you. So let's open this up and take a closer look. So here's the game, and then you had this microphone, and it would plug into this port. So the idea is that you would say a command to Pikachu and it would listen to you. However, the issue is it just didn't really work at all. So I didn't really know that this was a universal issue when I was playing it. I thought I was just really bad at it. But I think it had something to do with how it was set up. But I mean, I played this as a child. So Pikachu would just really not, listen to you. And, I guess if you were trying to think of like an in-universe reason why this worked so poorly, you could say, well, when you first meet Pikachu in the anime, it does not listen to you either, so maybe you could argue that actually this game is perfect and it works exactly as intended. But yeah, definitely never finished this game. And it's kind of funny if you've seen YouTubers playing through this game. It is tricky to get Pikachu to do what you want to just progress the story along. So definitely a unique idea that Nintendo had. It just didn't quite work in a way that was fun, I think, for people. But when I heard about the idea as a kid that you could talk to Pikachu and have it listen to you, I was like enamored with that idea. So anyways, that will wrap up this video. I think there's a few games that are obvious obviously missing from my collection that I would have loved to have. I don't have the Zelda games. I did play the not Majora's Mask, the Ocarina of Time remake on the 3DS, which was a really fantastic way to play that game. So I did get to play that. And then I don't have Mario Kart 64, which that's another game that I wish I had in my collection. And then finally, the one that comes to mind are the Snowboard Kid games. I remember renting Snowboard Kids and Snowboard Kids 2 at Blockbuster all the time. And I just, either I couldn't find it for sale or for whatever reason, I never was able to get a hold of that game. But I have a lot of fond memories of renting Snowboard Kids and its sequel, and the music is so great in those games. Definitely go check out some of that music if you haven't heard it. Would love to have another Snowboard Kids game. So let me know, what is your favorite memories of the N64 console? And do you have any games that you unfortunately weren't able to get a hold of, or any prized possessions like my wonderful museum quality sculptor's cut that I have here? So, until the next one,